Do the stars hold the ultimate secrets of human destiny? Why has mankind looked to the heavens for thousands of years, certain that fate and fortune were written in the skies? Before the art of astrology was developed, ancient people relied on a basic knowledge of the stars and planets for their very survival. Many sites around the world speak of astrology's earliest beginnings.
The origins of astrology might even go back more than 20,000 years into the Paleolithic, because there are carvings on bones and other objects that indicate perhaps early interest in lunar tallies, the motions of the moon.
The astrology practiced today was born over 4,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, now modern-day Iraq. Ancient civilizations in the region created some of the world's first cities and developed early agriculture. They were also among the first to turn skywatching into a codified system of astrology, a method which remains basically unchanged even now. The Babylonian system of astrology might have been lost forever if Alexander the Great had not taken its study back to Greece after his conquest of Mesopotamia.
When Alexander the Great invaded the East in 331 BC, this was a momentous event because he introduced Babylonian astrology to the Greeks and Greek mathematics and observational astronomy to the Babylonians. And the result was basically what we know today as astrology.
Babylonian priests saw astrology as the works of the gods. Later, Greek philosophers applied astrology to reveal individual character and personality. By the dawn of Christianity, the Roman Empire had succeeded the Greek and inherited its passion for astrology. As the Romans marched through Europe, astrology went with them. But historians often wonder why astrology was readily embraced by so many. Society easily accepted it, from peasants to emperors. One Roman ruler would select his astrologers by subjecting candidates to a test that could cost them their lives.
There is a very curious and quaint story about Tiberius Caesar hiring his personal astrologer named Thrasyllus. Tiberius tested his astrologers in a very peculiar way. What he would do is submit them to a test, and if they didn't pass the test, he would throw them off the cliff. Thrasyllus looked at the chart and trembled and said, "I see that I am in imminent danger of death, O Caesar. I know not from what cause." And Caesar said the equivalent in Latin of "you're hired." And Thrasyllus served Tiberius for the rest of Tiberius's life.
While a fascination with astrology thrived in Europe, other cultures around the world also studied the prophetic patterns of the stars. Chinese scholars devised an elaborate form of astrology based on associating each year with a particular animal. Constellation charts kept by stargazers for Chinese emperors are some of the earliest astrological artifacts ever discovered. On the other side of the world, the ancient Maya of Mexico and Guatemala created an elaborate calendar with incredible accuracy.
The ancient Maya developed probably the world's most elaborate astronomical and calendrical system. The day that you were born in the Maya 260-day calendar contained your fortune, contained your fate for the rest of your life, and you took part of your name from the day that you were born in this calendar.
While the chronological accuracy of the Mayan calendar is well known to archaeologists, much more mysterious is the Mayan system of prophecy. In the early 16th century, it was predicted that bearded, light-skinned visitors would arrive from the east. But the specific time of their expected appearance lay years in the future. The Maya lived to see the prophecy fulfilled. In 1519, as predicted, bearded, light-skinned people from the east set foot on the shores of Mexico. They were the conquistadors from Spain. The Mayan calendar may also hold a disturbing prophecy for the modern world. Over 2,000 years ago, Mayan astrologers calculated the date of the end of the world, a doomsday which is believed will take place in our own time. The Maya determined that the universe is destroyed and then recreated in regular cycles, once every 5,000 years.
This great 5,000-year cycle comes to an end soon. Probably most of us will live to see this. The date should be about December 21st, 2012. And although the ancient classic Maya civilization came to an end in roughly the 9th century AD, if those calendar priests were here to see it today, they would probably expect that in 2012, around the winter solstice, that our cosmos as we perceive it would come to an end and some profound new order would be established.
Did Mayan astrologers foresee a catastrophe as yet undetected by modern science? It is an ancient riddle to which the answer may soon be known. The Romans and Mayans were not the only ancient people to see signs written in the stars. Even sacred texts bear reference to the influence of astrology. Did the heavens foretell the coming of Jesus? What is the Star of Bethlehem that is said to have heralded his birth? Some of the earliest references to astrology are to be found in a surprising place, in the pages of the Holy Bible. Evidence also lies here, in the ancient ruins of the Holy Land. In 1932, archaeologists unearthed a 4th century synagogue in Israel. To their astonishment, they also unearthed something totally unexpected. In the very center of the temple, they found a beautiful mosaic of the zodiac. Its discovery baffled scholars who long believed that astrology was strictly forbidden in Judaism.
There shall not be found among you any that practice divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter. For all that do these things are an abomination unto the Lord. Deuteronomy 18:10.
If Judaism frowned upon astrology, how then did this zodiac become the centerpiece of a synagogue? Some scholars now believe that, contrary to long-held belief, astrology may not have been forbidden in ancient Israel.
The relationship of the ancient Hebrews or Israelites with astrology is a rather complicated one. What the Bible actually condemns is the worship of stars as if they were gods. The Bible has absolutely no problem with the idea of the stars being the messengers of God, or symbols of the will of God.
Unlike earlier civilizations, Judaism did not see astrology merely as a means of prophecy. The temple zodiac may have been a symbolic portrayal of the great cycle of the year, and the presence of a supreme being among the stars. Some scholars see the New Testament as the place where astrology plays a more active role in human affairs.
Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and have come to worship him. And lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. Matthew 2:1.
The story is one of the best loved of all religious tales. How three wise men from the east see a bright new star in the heavens. They follow the star to Bethlehem, where they discover a manger. Inside, they recognize a newborn child as the Messiah and offer him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, paying homage to the child as their Redeemer. What was the Star of Bethlehem? Could it have been an actual astronomical event? Who were the mysterious wise men or magi who followed the star?
The three magi of this story were definitely astrologers, and observing the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in Pisces, they may have thought like this. Pisces traditionally ruled Judea. Saturn traditionally signified the Jews, and Jupiter definitely signifies kingship. So they may well have deduced that the king of the Jews was being born in Judea.
Whether or not the three wise men were astrologers, the question remains, what did they see in the sky? Were they witnesses to an extraordinary astronomical event, an exploding star or supernova? 20 centuries later, the question still sparks controversy.
There are rationalist historians, and I'm not entirely sure I disagree with them, who question that there was such a phenomenon at all. There are a number of things we can eliminate immediately. It was not a supernova, because there are none recorded by anybody else at the time in question. It was probably not a comet, because that would have been noticed by other people.
It was not until the 17th century that the father of modern astronomy, Johannes Kepler, devised a radical theory to answer the riddle of the Star of Bethlehem. In the early 1600s, Kepler observed a rare conjunction of the planets Jupiter and Saturn. They appeared to the naked eye as a single dazzling new star. Kepler calculated that the last time this dramatic conjunction had taken place was the year 7 BC. Is this the actual date of Jesus' birth? Could this have been the Star of Bethlehem? Some astrologers assert that someone born on the date of the star in 7 BC is potentially a person capable of making a lasting impact on history.
Kepler suggested that the Star of Bethlehem was this conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter in Pisces. It took place in 7 BC, and it seems that he was right about that. And if the fascinating thing is that if you draw up a birth chart or a nativity for somebody born on the 22nd of August, 7 BC, every single planet is in its own sign, the sign that it naturally rules, the sun, the moon, Mercury, and so on, which would be an extraordinary birth chart to have.
Astrologers believe that someone born under this conjunction of the planets would be destined to change the world. Though astrology was frowned upon by Christianity, over the centuries, belief in the power of the stars steadily grew. By the Middle Ages, astrology was part of the curriculum taught at European universities. Rulers often based decisions of state on astrologers' advice. In the 15th and 16th centuries, Europe witnessed an unrivaled flowering of art, science, and exploration. In this period of cultural ferment, astrology flourished. During the Renaissance, there was perhaps no more intriguing figure than Dr. John Dee. He credited astrology with enabling him to foretell the destiny of a queen. Born during the reign of King Henry VIII, Dee was one of the finest mathematicians and scientists of the time. His study of optics laid the groundwork for Galileo's first telescope. The year is 1555. Though Dee is widely known as an astrologer, he is nevertheless surprised when he receives a summons to draw up a horoscope for an unusual client, none other than a member of the royal family, Princess Elizabeth. England is in the throes of a succession struggle, and this youngest daughter of Henry VIII has been placed under house arrest. Queen Mary feels threatened by the young princess, and it is rumored that Elizabeth is scheduled for execution. Fearing for her life, the desperate Elizabeth summons Dee to predict her future. Is she destined for the execution block, or will she survive her ordeal?
John Dee was a remarkable character in 16th century England. He was very learned in many disciplines that might today strike us as an odd combination: mathematics, but also magic, astronomy, but also astrology.
Dee learns the time and date of the imprisoned princess's birth and begins to calculate her chart. To Elizabeth's amazement, Dee reports that instead of execution, she faces a very different fate. According to her astrological chart, she is destined to become queen. Learning of the prophecy, Elizabeth's rival, Queen Mary, throws Dee into prison for heresy and treason, sentencing him to be burned at the stake. But the sentence is never carried out. Incredibly, as Dee had predicted, Queen Mary dies suddenly, and Elizabeth ascends to the throne. In gratitude, Elizabeth appoints John Dee England's royal astrologer. He would counsel the Queen on important decisions throughout her reign.
Queen Elizabeth I asked him to pick a propitious day for her coronation, which he did. You might draw the conclusion, in view of how successful her reign was, that he picked the right day.
Was Dee's horoscope an accurate prediction based on the stars, or simply a shrewd political guess? We may never know. But we do know that in the 15th and 16th centuries, astrology was entering a golden age throughout the world. However, new discoveries in the heavens, made possible by the invention of the telescope, created an ever-widening gap between the science of astronomy and the art of astrology. One of the key figures in this growing conflict was the German Johannes Kepler. He had already proved that the sun was the center of the solar system. Though considered a founding father of modern science, many believe Kepler was also an astrologer. In 1608, at his observatory near Prague, Kepler drew up a horoscope for Albrecht von Wallenstein, a young Czech military officer. The chart showed that Wallenstein was a Libra and that Mars, the planet of war, featured prominently in his life.
He is alert, eager, and restless, with scorn and indifference towards human laws and conventions. Unmerciful, belligerent, and fearless, such an unusual nature will be capable of great deeds. Johannes Kepler, 1608.
The analysis proved prophetic. Wallenstein went on to become a triumphant general in the 30 Years' War, and then the most powerful military leader in Europe. He based key decisions in his career on Kepler's astrological chart. In 1632, Wallenstein reached the height of his power. On the night before an important battle, he met with an astrologer for a reading. The stargazer issued an ominous warning. Despite Wallenstein's military superiority, the portents for the coming battle were unfavorable. The next day, Wallenstein's forces were defeated. Was this another self-fulfilling prophecy brought on by Wallenstein's own superstitious belief in astrology? Whatever it was, the defeat destroyed Wallenstein's career. Later, he was murdered by his own soldiers in the very month that Kepler had predicted 26 years earlier. Despite Kepler's personal belief in the powers of the zodiac, astrology lost favor as astronomy became the accepted science for the study of the stars. By the 20th century, science and society viewed astrology from a new perspective. Astrology, the study of how the heavenly bodies might influence our lives and personalities. Books and magazines on the subject are perennial bestsellers. Most major newspapers print a horoscope column. While millions believe in this ancient art, many more vehemently deny its validity. And yet the question persists: could this centuries-old practice reveal anything about our lives today?
Powerful transits. I'm not surprised that you've just gotten your PhD because it's a very much of a Jupiter kind of a...
Susie Cox is a professional astrologer. Her clients include celebrities, lawyers, and business leaders.
Really the trick for you to make money and to feel real successful is to do what you love. It's not like, oh, well, I'll get a job and I'll do that. That doesn't really work.
She believes astrology to be a complex synthesis of science and psychology.
Astrology is the study of the planetary cycles and how that correlates with human patterns and behaviors in life. I think it's also a tool for self-understanding and personal growth. And I think it's also an ancient symbolic language that astrologers translate into easy words for people.
About 4,000 years ago, the ancient Babylonians living in what is today Iraq were among the first to develop astrology. Dividing the sky into 12 equal sections, they believed that the position of the planets and constellations could influence fate and destiny. The Babylonians noted that every month the sun would rise with a different constellation. In March and April, the dominant constellation is Aries, in a pattern which was defined as a ram. The stars of Taurus rise next and are visualized as a bull. Later, the Greeks believed that each constellation exerts an effect on those born under its influence. Today, modern astrology is based on a combination of Babylonian and Greek, and is guided by the same belief in the power of the stars. What makes this ancient practice so popular in our high-tech computer age? Is it because people are looking for answers that science cannot provide? Or is it because, as professional astrologers insist, that astrology works?
I've done 26,000 charts over the years, and I've learned that every person connects with their chart. All someone has to do is observe and pay attention, and you realize it does work.
But many critics insist that science completely discredits astrology.
Well, we know that astrology can't work according to any laws of physics. Astrology is just utterly incompatible with a viewpoint of the world based on laws of physics.
Whether astrology is true or little more than superstition, the modern era has nevertheless proven to be a bonanza for professional astrologers. But how did this practice from the ancient world become so widespread in this century? In America, one extraordinary woman was responsible for thrusting astrology into mainstream popular culture. As the 20th century began, the burgeoning young medium of radio made a household name of Evangeline Adams, an astrologer who captured the public's attention. Her horoscopes became valuable collector's items.
My great aunt had her astrology chart done in about 1927 by Evangeline Adams, and I happen to have her birth chart that she did. So I feel somehow I'm connected with Evangeline Adams through my great aunt.
A trip to New York in 1899 launched Adams's amazing career. While staying at the upscale Windsor Hotel, Adams drew up a horoscope for the hotel's owner. She predicted a terrible personal disaster in his immediate future. The owner laughed off her prediction. But the next day, when his hotel was destroyed by fire, he became a firm believer. Evangeline Adams escaped unharmed. Her prediction made her fortune. Decades later, Adams broadcast her astrological predictions on her own weekly radio show. Crowds mobbed her offices in Carnegie Hall, requesting readings. In 1914, Adams was arrested and charged with violating an obscure New York City law against fraud by fortune tellers. But rather than pay the trivial fine, Adams insisted the case go to court. Suddenly, astrology itself was on trial.
Silence in the courtroom.
The case reached its climax when the prosecutors put Adams to the ultimate test. They asked her to interpret an anonymous horoscope. She rendered a detailed personality profile from the birth chart, ending in a prediction that the individual would face an early death from water. Only then did the astonished judge reveal that the horoscope was that of his own son, who had recently died in a swimming accident. The judge admitted that Adams' profile was uncannily accurate and proclaimed from the bench that she had raised astrology to a science. The case was dismissed.
Defendant dismissed.
Could there have been more to Adams's prediction than simple luck? Though scientists still scoff, she seemed to have proven the effectiveness of astrology in a court of law. A decade later, astrology underwent an even more grueling test. In the early 1920s, a German woman named Elsbeth Eberton cast a horoscope for the ideal man she believed could lead Germany to greatness. Eberton announced that if alive, Germany's finest leader would have been born on April 20th, 1889. The story was widely publicized, then forgotten. Only years later, when the Nazis rose to power, did Eberton realize she had unknowingly named the birth date of Adolf Hitler. Coincidence, perhaps? Or could Hitler have seen Eberton's horoscope, convincing him of his destiny? Was it a self-fulfilling prophecy? During World War II, rumors persisted that Hitler used an astrologer to plot his conquest of Europe. While the allegations were never proven, it is known that astrologers were consulted regularly by Hitler's inner circle, including Reichsmarschall Heinrich Himmler and Deputy Führer Rudolf Hess. But the influence of astrology on Hitler's Third Reich was short-lived.
It was understood by some astrologers that a configuration between the planets Uranus and Neptune that was occurring at the time indicated that it was a favorable time to make peace with the English. And so Hess, believing the English would work with Germany if only they could find an understanding, flew over, landed in a parachute, was rounded up by the British and spent the rest of the war and the rest of his life in jail.
Hitler was furious and blamed the humiliating incident on Hess's obsession with astrology. In 1944, he took drastic measures.
Shortly afterwards, Hitler rounded up all the astrologers and put them in concentration camps and burned their books. And that pretty much ended the influence of astrology in the Third Reich.
With the war's end, the world's passion for astrology continued to grow. What accounts for the continuing belief in the power of the stars? How can astrologers' predictions be explained? Does science hold the key to the mystery? Since the 1700s, astrology has fallen into disrepute. Today, the scientific community regards it as little more than empty superstition.
Well, we know that astrology can't work according to new laws of physics. We know in physics that there are basically four forces that govern the behavior of matter: gravitation, electromagnetism, the strong and the weak nuclear interactions. And none of those things can possibly account for any of the claims that astrologers make.
But is the universe perhaps made of stranger stuff? What else could account for certain accuracies of astrology? Scientists, however, dismiss most of the evidence as mere coincidence. Over the years, numerous studies have debunked astrology. In one often repeated test, subjects are given the wrong astrological profiles and asked if the horoscope matches their own personalities. Aries were given Libra personality traits and Libras labeled as having Capricorn qualities. In every test, the vast majority of subjects said they recognized themselves in the false horoscopes, discrediting the validity of astrology. In a study at Indiana University, 6 professional astrologers were given horoscopes of 23 test subjects and asked to match the astrological descriptions with the personality traits of the volunteers. The results? Not one of the astrologers was successful.
What they found was that there was no correlation between the personality traits and the horoscopes. Moreover, the astrologers didn't agree with each other. What they're talking about is something that isn't a rational scientific worldview. If you really believe that the laws of physics govern everything there is, then there's no hope for something like astrology to make any sense.
However, one research study came up with results that surprised the scientific community. In 1953, French psychologist Michel Gauquelin decided to put astrology to his own test. A skeptic in regard to this ancient art, Gauquelin hoped that his statistics would finally lay the claims of astrologers to rest. To Gauquelin's surprise, his study showed that there was a statistical correlation between the stars and the personalities and career choices of his subjects. Gauquelin's study showed that a statistically significant percentage of politicians were born when Jupiter, the planet of rulership, was rising at the moment of their births. The astrological charts of doctors and scientists seemed to be marked by the presence of Saturn, the planet of reflection and study. Mars, the planet of war and courage, showed an above-average presence in the charts of generals, athletes, and business executives.
The fascinating thing about these results were that they were fully in line with traditional astrological understandings of the planets. So Mars was the planet that showed up with athletes and soldiers and so on. And those results still stand today.
But was Gauquelin's experiment a scientific breakthrough? While many still oppose astrology, its practitioners hope to use the latest information from space exploration to enhance their understanding.
There is a type of astrology that is called deep space astrology, and instead of just using the planets in the solar system, they can put quasars, black holes, pulsars. There are some astrologers that are using a lot of different asteroids and putting it around the chart, so it's not just the planets.
Some believe that future space missions will make new discoveries that may offer deeper insight into astrology. Are these new methods proof that astrology can change with the times? Or are they simply an attempt to add a pseudo-scientific flavor to ancient superstition? Despite the centuries-old battle between believers and skeptics, astrology continues to fascinate millions. The question still remains, what has given this 4,000-year-old practice such lasting appeal?
I think astrology is still so popular today in an era of science because it contains all that mystery of a powerful and ancient system which has a great appeal to us. I think its roots really lie in human nature itself, our basic need for a relationship with the sky and with the rhythms of the heavens and cosmos.
So why would people turn to astrology, even powerful people, even world leaders today? I can only speculate, of course, because I can't see into anyone's mind, but I would guess it's because people are looking for something of more depth, something more substantive than what science can offer.
What I believe in is the right of people to believe in astrology if they want to. and if they find it useful and valuable in their lives. If astrology points to the mystery of what it means to be alive, that's a perpetual mystery which will never be solved. And in that sense, astrology is a mystery that will never arrive at a final resolution.
For 4,000 years, astrology has intrigued humanity with the tantalizing possibility that we can predict the future. Although science repeatedly discredits this ancient art, the notion that the stars could influence human destiny continues to work its spell on each new generation. Perhaps astrology endures because it answers the human urge to unlock life's mysteries, the same urge that sends us on our journey in search of history.